Vanakkam Lohadeva. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Binbishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. And we'll start by sharing the screen. There we go, share. And that is today's date in Singapore, May 29th. And our first topic, answering questions. Lots of great questions have come in, and we're able to answer a good number of them today. When we wanted to start by looking again at the question on world peace that we answered last time. This was the question. Given that this world is a place where young souls as well as old souls have taken birth to evolve, I sometimes wonder what difference it makes to pray for world peace, since young souls often create difficult karma, while more mature souls who do create karma but more naturally follow dharma are probably the ones praying for world peace. Does praying for world peace really help the world? Excuse me. Be a more peaceful place overall, and if so, what is a good prayer or visualization for us to practice? So as you'll recall, instead of recommending a prayer or visualization, we focused on interpersonal interactions. So last week's answer focused on interpersonal interactions and reads. Every individual can help increase world peace within his or her sphere of influence. Said another way, every interpersonal interaction you have is an opportunity to advance world peace. That's basically a summary of what we said last time. So this time we want to add another idea, because that's not the only way in which we as a group are able to influence world peace. This is an interesting one you may not have thought of. Today's answer talks about the influence of monasteries on world peace. Yes, monasteries. So we have a quote from the Master Course on this. Monks of every Hindu order are guided and guarded by unseen beings who look after their lives as if they were their own. Families are blessed who share in and support the renunciation of their sons born through them to perform a greater dharma than the grahastha life could ever offer. It is the monastic communities worldwide, of all religions, notice, of all religions, that sustain sanity on this planet. It is the monks living up to their vows who sustain the vibration of law and order in the communities and nations of the world. This is how the Divanic world sees each monastic community worldwide. This is how it is and should always be. Sounds like Gurudeva. This is how it is and should always be. This is how humanity balances out its experiential karmas and avoids destroying itself as it passes through the darkness of the Kali Yuga. The monastic communities that surround the planet, fulfilling their dharma, compensate for the adharma that is so prevalent, thus ensuring that humanity does not self-destruct in these trying times. Read that one again. Thus ensuring that humanity does not self-destruct in these trying times. We must, for the sake of clarity, state here that monastic communities are either strictly male or strictly female. Co-ed mixed group ashramas are not monastic communities, but classed rather traditionally as communes. Yes, so that's an important point. for the vibration of a monastery to do what Gurudev is describing, it needs either to be all male or all female. All female monasteries aren't that well known, but in our distant experience from Hawaii, you can see them in the photos and interviews we take from the Kumbh Melas, where the sannyasinis show up in large numbers and have excellent statements to make about life. And it's totally women in that particular monastery. So they are out there in Hinduism. It's just they're not that well known. They don't get the publicity that the male monasteries get. And a second quote. This is a pretty obscure source called Sci-Fi Shastras. Excuse me. Small cold. Sci-Fi Shastras. So what are the Sci-Fi Shastras? They're a writing Gurudeva did from the inner planes, dictating from the inner planes, which gives principles for the monasteries. Principles for the monasteries as to how they should function at the time the writing was written. It's not talking about the past, which is Lemurian scrolls. It's talking about the present when it was written, and it was written in the 1970s, somewhere early in the 1970s. Each monastic was treated as an individual soul, and a sense of sameness pervaded through all of the Saivite monasteries. There was a great feeling of there is nothing happening here. The darshan was strong and fulfilled its purpose. The families began to send their sons to the monastery well-trained, as well as assume their position in training young men of other families. Their daughters were kept virgins until marriage, as were their sons, and a new Saivite culture began to bloom surrounding each monastery. As the darshan more and more fulfilled its purpose of stabilizing the intensity of Saivism in the minds of the families and surrounding community. Stabilizing the intensity of Saivism. Interesting statement. Even other religions, such as Buddhism, began to flourish in the darshan radiations from the Saivite monasteries. So there's a lot of Buddhist temples on the island here. Buddhist temples are mainly 90-some% all Japanese in origin. There are a few recent Tibetan ones as well. Even other religions, such as Buddhism, began to flourish in the darshan radiations from the Saivite monasteries. A great harmony was felt by all, under and guided by the systematic dissemination of encouragement and discipline through the Guru's secretary and 2 helpers in the senior group of each monastery. So that's a bit technical, which I won't try and explain. But you get the vision that the monastery is stabilizing the members of the faith, and similar faiths too, because Buddhism is very similar to Hinduism. That is the second type of answer to the question on world peace. So now we're moving on to a few new questions. Next question is, how is Satchitananda experienced, achieved, and sustained? A lot in that question. Experienced, achieved, sustained. So there's a publisher's desk that answers this question at length. It is kind of a fun one, a little bit of tongue-in-cheek in this. Claiming your omnipresence. How to separate your awareness from what you are aware of and enjoy a part of your mind that is always peaceful and all-pervasive. So that's the theme you'll see throughout this pub desk. Excuse me. In other words, you're already omnipresent. You don't have to do anything to become omnipresent. It's just that most people aren't aware of the part of them that is omnipresent. So it's a question of figuring out how to get in touch with that part of you that's already omnipresent. And this publisher desk gives a few kind of fun ideas, not overly serious. Written in 2019. Omnipresence is defined as a state of being present everywhere at the same time. In a religious context, omnipresence is generally thought of as an attribute unique to God. God is present everywhere, whereas man is only present in the location of his physical body. Hindu thought differs from this perspective. Not only is God omnipresent, he has graciously shared that attribute with us. Thank you, God Shiva. Graciously shared that attribute with us. Where is it? Omnipresence is found at the core of our soul. Oh, okay, core of our soul. Gurudeva sometimes calls that the nucleus of the soul, core of the soul. Has two things in it, omnipresence and the source of omnipresence. Omnipresence, Satchitananda or Parashakti, and source of omnipresence, Parashiva. Two aspects of Shiva are present in the core or nucleus of our soul. We can compare this to the Internet, which was created by the U.S. Department of Defense for their use, but was ultimately given to the world for everyone to freely use. I have coined a word for the omnipresent network that is accessed by experiencing the core of the soul. I call it the Internet. So it doesn't have a T in the middle. Internet versus Internet, in case it's not obvious. Realized beings have shared their experience of the Internet. Yoga Swami expressed it in this way. Bliss, bliss, bliss. I am here, I am there, I am everywhere. Anandam, 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 ingum, angum, engum, nan. To make sure his devotees didn't think that this was an attainment unique to him, he would also state, I am everywhere, you are everywhere, but you don't believe it. He hit the nail on the head, as they say in English. We don't believe it. Part of us at least doesn't believe it. Even if you accepted my initial statement, you're already omnipresent, part of you has trouble accepting it. Because we're not programmed that way. We're programmed to think we're limited. Well, part of us is limited and part of us is unlimited. That's the point. And Yoga Swami understood this very well and was trying to talk his devotees into claiming their omnipresence. He also made seemingly outlandish statements such as, now I am sitting here, I am in England also, I am also in America. That's because Gurudeva was in America. Not only was Yoga Swami able to experience the Internet, he was able to utilize it to accomplish tasks at a distance. We can give initiation by thought to people in Singapore while remaining here in Sri Lanka. Saves on airfare. So yes, he could actually use it. This interior network has a parallel to the external internet, with which we remotely access digital devices that are thousands of miles away from our computers. In Hindu philosophy, the Sanskrit term most commonly used for the internet of omnipresence is Satchitananda. We have a definition from our lexicon. Satchitananda, existence, consciousness, bliss. A synonym for Parashakti, Lord Shiva's divine mind, and simultaneously the pure superconscious mind of each individual soul. Nicely said. Satchitananda is perfect love and omnipotent consciousness, the fountainhead of all existence, yet containing and permeating all existence. Also called pure consciousness, pure form, substratum of existence, and more. One of the goals of the meditator or yogi is to experience the natural state of the mind, Satchitananda, holding back the vrittis through yogic practices. Vritis, in case anyone has forgotten, means mental activities. Yogaswami had a terse way of stating this. Satchitananda, that is one thing, Satchitananda. Sat is you are. Chit is omnipresence. Prakash, light as from the sun, all-knowing. Ananda is bliss. They are three, but they are one. That is your nature. So you don't want to think about Satchitananda as three different things. It's three different attributes to one thing. You can say something's round, blue, and heavy. It's one thing, but it has three attributes. In Hinduism, it is not enough to simply state that omnipresence resides at the core of our soul. What else do we need to do? I should have stuck a question there, so I'll ask you a question. What else do we need to do besides state that omnipresence resides at the core of our soul? We all know the answer, of course. We have to experience it. This truth must be experienced by each of us ultimately. We can move toward experiencing omnipresence using a series of progressive practices. Okay, so this is getting into aspects of the question, how do we experience and then experience it again? We can move toward experiencing omnipresence through using a series of progressive practices. Okay, well, what's the first practice? First step is to understand and then identify ourselves as awareness rather than what we are aware of. Basic one. Yoga Sutras, first 4 verses. Now, the exposition of yoga. Yoga is the restraint of mental activities. Then awareness resides in its natural state. Otherwise, awareness identifies with the mental activities. Beautifully said, Patanjali. Awareness is the soul's ability to sense, see, or know, and to be conscious of this knowing. In the Yoga Sutras, awareness is termed Drashta, Drik, Chit, and Chit Shakti. Chit and Chid are the same word, it's just the T becomes a D when certain letters are after it, I believe. State referred to in verse 3, then awareness abides in its essential nature, is the result of awareness disuniting with the mental activities and remaining temporarily aware only of itself until thoughts again arise. Therefore, first exercise, first basic practice, identifying yourself as awareness rather than what it is aware of. Mentally repeat the question, who am I, for 1 minute while being aware that you are repeating it. During the next minute, cease the repetition and simply be aware of what was aware of repeating it. So we can actually practice that. 2 parts. For 1 minute, mentally repeat the question, who am I, while being aware that you are repeating it. Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? Be aware of that you're repeating it. During the next minute, cease the repetition and simply be aware of what was aware of repeating it. So that is also called the witness. Awareness is what's witnessing everything that's going on. It's the eye of the mind. An example may be helpful. I hold up a piece of paper and I say, I see the paper. That makes sense, right? I see the paper in my hand. If I say, I am the paper, how many would agree? Of course, no one. We are trained from childhood that we are not physical objects. We perceive them. We see the paper. We smell the incense. We hear the water flowing. We are different from them. That's the way we think. But then we say, I am happy. Think about it. We identify with the happiness we experience, but we are not the paper we see. Inconsistent. Returning to Patanjali's verses, happiness is the mental activity that awareness has taken the form of or identified with. The goal is to distinguish ourselves from what is mental in the same way we distinguish ourselves from what is physical. We don't want to think, I am happy. We want to think, I, awareness, am experiencing the emotion called happiness, but I am not happiness. I am the experiencer of happiness. That isn't who I am, just as I am not the paper I see. So that's the first level of learning to experience our omnipresence, Satchitananda. Many of you have practiced that and understand it, but some haven't yet. But it's important. And the emotions are a good way to check yourself. Because when we get emotional, it's easy to identify with the emotions. I'm really stressed out. You think the I is stressed out, but the I isn't stressed out. The I is witnessing the state of consciousness of being stressed. So if you can catch yourself and rephrase it, it's good. Also the body. We say, I am hungry. That means you're the body. The body is hungry. My body is hungry. Gets hungry 3 times a day or more. Perfectly natural. But I'm not hungry. I'm witnessing that the body is hungry. If you can program yourself to think of it that way, then it's easier when you actually sit down to meditate to be the experiencer rather than the state of consciousness being experienced. Second step, moving awareness. A good second step toward claiming our soul's omnipresence is to control the state of consciousness that you as awareness are currently experiencing. If you are in a slightly depressed state of mind, move awareness into a happier one. If you are jealous of an individual, move into a state of being happy for what he or she has achieved. Gurudeva taught this principle by comparing the states of consciousness and individual experiences to a large city and awareness to the traveler through this city. That's San Francisco, if anyone doesn't know. Generally, people take problems too personally by identifying closely with them. When they experience anger, they are angry. When they experience bliss, they are blissful. The mystic identifies with the experiencer instead of the experience. He sees himself as pure awareness that travels in the mind. When he is in San Francisco, he is not San Francisco. Similarly, when he is in anger, he is not anger. He says to himself, I am pure energy. I am the spiritual energy that floods through mind and body. I am not the body, the mind, or the emotions. I am not the thoughts I think or the experiences I experience. Thus he molds a new identity of himself as a free being who can travel anywhere in the mind. Such a person is always at the top of the mountain. Gurudeva wrote about the need to move awareness nimbly for this realization to occur. The self, Parashiva, is so simple. You have to be so simple to realize the self, not simple-minded, but so unattached. Awareness has to be able to move so nimbly through the mind, like a graceful deer going through the forest so deftly through the mind that none of the sticky substance of the mind, so to speak, sticks onto awareness and holds it steadfast for a period of time. And only with that agility can you move awareness in quickly to the source. in on itself until you come out having realized the self. It is an experience you come out of more than go into. So Gurudev is pointing out here some areas of our consciousness are sticky, meaning awareness gets near it and gets trapped, like a fly gets trapped in a sticky substance and it can't extract itself. But if our awareness is getting trapped, getting stuck to something in consciousness, no way we can realize the self. It has to be totally unable to be stuck to something to be able to realize the self. Omnipresent consciousness has other qualities, such as being eternal and changeless. You, as omnipresence, have always existed and have never changed. So part of you has never changed, the part of you that's omnipresent. It can't change because it's totally mature. Charming story told by a former Canadian ambassador to Sri Lanka illustrates this idea. My wife and I brought our 3 children to see Yoga Swami. Turning to the children, he asked each of them, "How old are you?" Our daughter said 9 and the boys 11 and 13. To each in turn, Yoga Swami replied solemnly, "I am the same age as you." When the children protested that he couldn't be 3 different ages at once, that he must be older than their grandfather, much older, Yoga Swami just laughed and winked at us to see if we understood. At the time, we took it as a joke with the children. But slowly we came to see that he meant something profound, which was for us to decipher. Now, I think this was his way of saying indirectly that although the body may be of very different ages on its way from birth to death, something just as real as the body and for which the body is only a vehicle, always was and always will be. In that sense, we are in essence all the same age. So something just as real as the body and for which the body is only a vehicle, always was and always will be. Nicely said. Excuse me. 3 more exercises in connecting with your inherent omnipresence. Give them a try. These are kind of fun. When you come home from visiting a temple, imagine you are still in the temple in front of the deity. And feel the vibration of the distant temple within you. So this works best with a temple you've been to a lot and which you feel and with which you feel a strong connection. So you're actually there and feeling what's going on there. You may not realize it, you may think you're imagining it, but you're actually in the temple because you're connected to it. 2, when you walk down the street, imagine that you are in 2 places, where you are standing and also ahead of your body at the end of the block. So if you can do that, you're actually touching into your omnipresence. 3rd one I like. When walking, strive to go deeply enough within to see that you as awareness are actually standing still, not moving. Some devotees have mentioned that they've had that experience of the body is moving, but their mind is standing still. They were either walking or driving a car or something, and they had a sense of being the part of them that was standing still, not the part that was moving. So that's Satchitananda. So we can try and tap into it in fun ways, such as the 3 just mentioned. And one of the basic practices here is the next time you find yourself in a negative state of consciousness, move awareness out of it into the positive consciousness that you are a spiritual being whose essence is identical with God. So we need to strengthen our ability to move out of states of consciousness we don't want to be in by doing so quickly. Identifying yourself as awareness and learning to move awareness out of negative states of consciousness into positive ones brings you closer to experiencing yourself as omnipresence. Satchitananda, the most subtle level of existence you can be aware of. So that concludes the answer to that part of the question there. There's more. There's another part of the question, which we'll cover probably in this week from now. This one was Satchitananda. The next one is Parashiva. Deep question. Second topic, balancing out here, something very practical. Diligence, 19th character quality of our character building workbook. And it follows our usual format, which asks you to define diligence. Workbook says diligence means performing tasks thoroughly and with careful, earnest, steady effort. I strengthen diligence when I do my best in vigorously completing any work or instruction. The opposite is half-heartedness. And quotes from Gurudeva, hard work, diligence, and perseverance in religious practices will be found as the spiritual foundation in the lives of all the world's great saints. Meditation is essentially work, good hard work, and you should be willing to work and expend energy so that you can meditate. Third quote, one must look at spiritual unfoldment in the same way one approaches the study of a fine art. If you were studying the Veena with a very accomplished teacher, he would not appreciate it at all if you went to 3 or 4 other teachers at the same time for study behind his back. He demands that you come and go from your lesson and practice diligently in between. Comparing the actions of one who is diligent to one who is half-hearted. First situation, when given instructions for a new project, at school, diligence. Take on the task with an interest, energy, and keen intent on completion. Half-heartedness. Think how you can do the minimum without exerting yourself too much. Second situation, inspired by a new hobby of puzzle solving. Diligence. Vigorously move forward, meeting each challenge and overcoming it. Half-heartedness. Start out with enthusiasm, which soon wanes as you encounter difficulties. Third situation, when distractions arise, diligence. Tune them out and stay focused on the task at hand. Half-heartedness, welcome them as an interesting diversion from your work. Reflection. Take a moment to identify a few ways in which you could improve in diligence. Give you a minute to do that. And the workbook's assignment in the next 2 weeks. Find 3 opportunities to respond to a task with a level of energy higher than you normally exert. Observe your mood as you complete the task with earnestness and steady effort. Oh, that's our presentation for today. Thank you very much. Om